Hi, Shane Harrison. I talked about who's the best drummer, and the argument goes on. And I'm going to explain one thing. When I was young, the exposure we had to drummers was very limited. If you didn't buy the music, of course, when you're super young, you can't afford to go out and buy albums and whatever. So you had the radio and a little earpiece at that or a radio. And so you listen to things. And even the exposure to some of that was pretty limited because you could only hear what was played. So you didn't hear Rush on the radio and stuff back then. Maybe if you heard a Zeppelin tune, it might be Stairway to Heaven. But a lot of what you heard was the pop type stuff. So the influence, when I say best to me, I talk about who was super influential to me. And a lot of it included exposure. So I'm going to give you three drummers that were some might consider one of them the best ever. Some might consider some of the greatest. But to me, they were some of the most influential drummers when I was young. And it was because of my exposure to them. And number one was Buddy Rich. And I had been told by my first teacher about Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. Um, and the amazement and speed and chops and stuff of Buddy Rich. And I would hear recordings that maybe my teacher might present to me, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I really liked the big band jazz music. And so um, the TV Guide, which was a little magazine that you would get every week that would tell you what was on the channels. And people don't realize back then you had three channels. You had ABC, NBC, CBS, and maybe a PBS channel. And then maybe if you got to UHF, you'd have some kind of a weird thing you could get with an antenna or whatever. That's basically all you had. But The Tonight Show by Johnny Carson was a 90-minute show back then. It came on, and then the TV Guide, it would tell you the guest. And every time Buddy Rich was on, I would like make a note to stay up and watch that show because of Buddy Rich was going to be on. And that was an exposure I had. We didn't have the magazines. We didn't have just didn't have access to a lot of that, especially as a kid. And like I said, I didn't have the money to go buy the albums and stuff. So Buddy was a huge influence on me because whenever I saw him, I would try to steal or emulate licks. And it was very limited, but he became such a huge influence in me and a stature of what I wanted to be. Okay, so that's one, Buddy Rich. A lot of people consider him the best ever, others don't, and that's fine. Number two was somebody else I saw by starting to watch that show was Ed Shaughnessy. Now, Ed Shaughnessy was a big band drummer, and he was the house drummer for Doc Severinsen's Tonight Show band. And because I was a fan of drumming and studying, taking lessons, and trying to participate in like junior high jazz band and stuff like that, I gravitated toward starting to watch the Tonight Show all the time because when it was a 90-minute show, they would often feature the band quite a bit more. And of course, you got to hear them play the intro, play out to a commercial, or come back, and then you'd always hear the band ending. And sometimes you hear Ed do some kind of flourishes and stuff. So that was an influence on me because that's what I had exposure to. And then another one was Ringo. And Ringo's always mentioned in a lot of people's categories as one of the best drummers ever, where other people dismiss him saying, oh, he doesn't do anything. He did what he needed to do, and it worked perfectly. And my exposure to the Beatles, of course, was there was stuff I heard on the radio, but also my aunt had some albums that I took and played. So I had started to hear things. And what I liked about that was I felt like even early on in my drumming life or career, wasn't a career at that point, but studying, I could grasp onto some of those things and copy them, as opposed to grasping onto what Buddy Rich was doing was beyond some of my comprehension. But I could hear a Beatles tune and go, oh, wait, that's just a do, got. And I could do that. And so it became like a vocabulary to kind of start to learn some of those songs. And I mean, he became an influence because I was trying to copy what I heard by him. And steal the ideas. So that to me was one of the most influential drummers on me when I was young, as was Buddy Rich and Ed Shaughnessy. So those are three. Uh, in the, if you want to say, are they the best drummers in the world? I think Buddy fits into that category. The others are fantastic drummers in their own right, and great drummers and influential drummers on me, whether they would be on somebody else's list or not. I think if you looked at the Rolling Stone top 20, or they call it their top 100 or whatever it is, top 50 drummers of all time, Ringo's on there. I don't think Ed Shaughnessy is. But when you start to talk about ability, chops, musicality, all that, you get people like Ed Shaughnessy that get dismissed just because a lot of people don't, if they don't follow that big band genre, they don't care about that. And that's the same thing when people say the best drummer. The best drummer is who you think it is based on what you listen to. Okay, there's people out there now that are amazing, and we have this YouTube exposure and can get that. We didn't have that back in the day. So for me, based on exposure of television or listening to the radio or stealing my aunt's records, early on, three that were hugely influential were Ringo, Buddy Rich, and Ed Shaughnessy. I think Buddy does fit into the category of one of the best drummers ever. So there you go.